for sharing that. That was really wonderful and very powerful. I think everybody can agree on that. Next up, we're going to have our survivor speaker, Lindy Schleyball. I'm going to give you a quick introduction. So Lindy graduated from Lakeland in 2000. She's from Wilketville, so she's local. She knows all about LaGrange County. She's a dog mom to a cute puppy, well not puppy, but named Dory. Her husband's name is Daryl, and they're happily married. And they are on a very new path to adoption. So everybody say a prayer for that if you pray. And she has recently been contracted with TDN to publish her first book. And she has a very faith-focused fitness and nutrition. She's a coach for that, and she has been for over 7 years. And she likes to spend a lot of time at the lake. So let's welcome Lindy.
I think I'm going to mix the microphone too if you all can hear me. I'm shaking up. So I just think it's pretty amazing that we live in a county that makes it a priority to put on events like this. Thank you all for sharing. Please bear with me. I am an emotional speaker. I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm sad. I cry when I'm frustrated. I cry when I feel like the Spirit of God is moving in my life. As I've been preparing for this talk over the past couple of months and trying to figure out what am I going to talk about to a room full of people who have either, obviously if you're a part of this, you've probably experienced sexual assault or you know or love someone who does. Not an easy or, like you said, fun subject to talk about, but I think that it is vital for ourselves, our healing, our kids, and the people that we love to talk about these things, even if they're hard. So as I've been in my prayer time the last couple of days, I'm like, okay, Lord, how am I gonna talk about this subject? Every time I share my story, it brings up the emotions. It takes me back to the room. I identify with this poster 100%. And this morning God was like, you have a healing story. You have a testimony, and what you say, what you have to say matters. It's going to make a difference. I always tell myself I'm not going to cry, and then I cry. So I am going to ask for a little bit of crowd participation just because it takes a little bit of the pressure off of me and can get you guys involved. So I would just like to see a show of hands if you've ever had to forgive someone that you didn't want to. Thank you for raising your hands. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands for the next one, but I would also like you to think about if there's someone in your life that you know you need to forgive that you're really struggling to. I just want to tell you how grateful I am to be here. It really is a blessing for me to be able to share. These are not always tears of sadness. That's just who I am. So I read a stat a couple of weeks ago, and it said 470,000 people ages 12 and over, boys and girls, report sexual assault every year. And I think if we were to be honest, the number is probably 10 to 100 times that. I did not report my assault, and in the last 7+ years as working with women in their own healing journeys, I have had people up until 48 hours ago reach out to share their story with me that they have never told anyone before. So these stories happen all day, every day, and if you have someone in your life that you think might be affected, please have the hard conversation. I remember waking up the morning after I was assaulted. I was in the basement of a college house. It was my senior year of college, and I was searching for my pants in the dark. I remember what I was wearing, from my jean shorts to my Old Navy gray spaghetti strap tank top. I found my pants, I ran out of that room, and on the way home, I was thinking to myself, did this really happen? I had asked my very dear friend, who was like a brother to me, if I could sleep in his bed because it was a safe place, that I felt safe there. It wasn't. And as I'm driving back to my apartment that next morning, I was still drunk and probably high from the night before. I walked into my apartment and my roommate was getting ready for work. And it just blurted out of my mouth. I told her what happened. And she looked at me with the coldest stare. And she said, well, what do you expect of me? You asked to sleep in his bed. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's right. I did this to myself. For 15 years, I pushed that memory down and I didn't talk about it. Within 7 months, I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, IBS-C, and still to this day, I struggle with anxiety. Brandy mentioned I became a health and fitness coach in 2017, and one of our daily habits is daily personal development. And every morning, we're encouraged to read something that's going to encourage us to keep moving. If you've created a business or have ever done anything new, you know that pushing towards your mission and vision, you have to be encouraged. And so I was reading this book. I had a very strained relationship with my dad. We didn't talk for about 8 years, and so I went into this book with the intention of forgiving him. And as I'm reading this book, I'm journaling, I'm sitting on the floor in my office one day, and I just kind of like crumpled over, and all the sights and the smells from that night started to come back. And I could see his face on top of me. And the details came back and I remembered what had happened. Probably about 7 months before that, I had been going back to church. My friend Leanna had invited me to the church of God here in LaGrange. And if any of you have ever attended or have heard Ben Stuckey talk, he encouraged he encouraged all of us to read our Bible, to get in the Word, to study, and see what God had to say about our lives. And I had walked away from church 15 years before. I didn't think that I was worthy of redemption or any of the things that I had learned growing up. I was saved when I was 14. I was baptized. I was very involved in this community and campus life in my church. And I was partying and doing all the things in college. I moved home. I was still partying. I was drinking. I had inappropriate relationships. And I just felt unworthy. So as I've gone back to church, I'm getting in the Word. I'm studying and reading all of the things about forgiveness and grace and mercy. And learning that Jesus just wants to have a relationship with me. Things started to change. Ben had asked me to share my testimony about my weight loss journey. I had gained 100 pounds in that transition of my 15 years of mess. And so I knew when he called me into his office that I was going to have to talk to him about my actual testimony and not just my weight loss story. And as we're sitting there and we're talking, and he just started asking me some questions, and I broke down, and that was the first time that I had said ever out loud that I was assaulted. So I want to share with you today what I feel like are my 3 steps to healing. You can use them whether you've been assaulted, or I think most of us have probably struggled with something in our lives. But I think that the first most important thing is to just recognize and own your story. For me, it took 15 years to come to the realization of what had happened. Someone might need you to be their voice and their memory. So one of my favorite verses is John 16:33. And it says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. The one thing that I learned from giving my life back to God in 2016 is that it doesn't get easier, but in Him I have peace. My life is still messy, I have struggles, but in Him I always have peace. The second step is talk to someone. If it wasn't for Ben and me being able to voice what had happened to me, I don't think I truly could have taken on the process that I needed to go through to actually heal myself, what was inside. Self-reflection is not easy. It's not always fun. Healing is messy. It is ugly. It hurts. It takes time. If you've ever dealt with any kind of trauma at all, you know that. And it's okay. Sometimes it rears its ugly head day after day. And you just have to continue, as we read in 2 Corinthians, take that thought captive and make it obedient to Christ. Because the anxiety that rages in my head, sometimes on a daily basis, if I believe that, if I buy into the lie of the enemy, I can go right back to that room. And I don't live there anymore. I live in who he says I am today. So the third part, and I think this is the hardest part, is you have to forgive. Forgiveness is for our sake, not for theirs. Forgiveness for the person that assaulted you, and forgiveness for yourself. My roommate, her words, I don't think she ever could even imagine what they did to me. I had to forgive her. I had to forgive the person that assaulted me, and I had to forgive myself for using those 15 years instead of taking ownership and doing the thing I needed to do. I had a lot of self-forgiveness. It's daily intentional action. It is taking one step at a time, and it is hard. But I think about this time that we're in. I think about Jesus and all of the blessings that he has poured on my life. And I'm standing here crying, like I said I was not going to do. But it's because I am free. I am not who I was before. I'm who I choose to be today. And we all get that same opportunity. I think about the sacrifice that he gave for us. We talk about Good Friday. We talk about Easter. But we don't talk about what's after that. We don't talk about this time of Pentecost that we're in right now, the 50 days after Christ ascended. And to me, it's the most important part, because we read in the New Testament that on that 50th day, when he ascended into heaven, he said, I'm going to send a helper to you. And that when you believe in me and you accept me as your Savior, I'm going to send the Holy Spirit to live inside of you. He alone is our peace and our healing and our joy. And I've chased the income. I've chased relationships. I've chased the alcohol, the high. I've chased it all. Jesus is alone is our peace. And if you haven't made the decision, if you're still struggling with healing or forgiveness or owning your part of the story, I would be happy to talk to anyone. If you know someone who's struggling, if you're struggling yourself, because we are all worth the hard work that it's going to take to move on to be the person that we're called to be and live in the purpose that we're called to live. So thank you for letting me cry for you the last 15 minutes. I just really appreciate you asking me to share